There was an instance recently, they tried to turn off an AI system and it wouldn't let them. They tried to trick them.
Oh, the AI is already out of control.
You would see that the potential is there for that to happen.
Barry Sendach is a 30-year entrepreneur and founder of Tentspaces, the leading dome manufacturer in America. From celebrities to Fortune 500, he's built a global outdoor revolution, and now he's integrating AI to change the game once again.
With AI so far, where are you in your AI journey?
The purpose of it for me is to keep up with the world. AI is here, it's big, it's going to be bigger.
In my head, I sometimes equate AI with a utility as we move forward here. It'll be as ubiquitous as what the internet has become.
We hope it won't become like those sci-fi movies where the AI takes over and game over.
You were talking about sales, having AI help you with sales. What did you have in mind there?
80% of the people you talk to are basically a waste of time. Fine-tuning the sales process would be optimal. Even coming down to where it could automatically send an email to the potential client.
Just about everything you said can actually be improved with an AI or even fully automated with an AI. Let me explain what I mean. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AI for Business Owners podcast. My name is Jeff Torello. I'm your host. With me today is Barry Sendach, and I'm going to have Barry introduce himself, and we'll get started on our conversation. Barry, thanks for joining. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and my name is Barry Sendach. I own a business. We sell a lot of outdoor equipment for people to live in and for commercial use, all kinds of domes and tents and yurts, and we build shipping container homes. And I'm happy to share my experiences with you, Jeff.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yurts have become very popular in the last, probably decade or so. Maybe it's more popular for you than it is for me. I know I've been hearing about them. How long have you been doing yurt kind of stuff?
Well, the yurt type of thing, before COVID, they used a lot of spiritual places like yoga retreats and people who are like, just want to get back to nature, use them. Yurts have been around probably 3,000 years.
Yeah, I know they're old. You're right. What is stupid question, has nothing to do with AI, but I'm here and I've got you. So what's the difference between a yurt and like just a tent? Like what makes a yurt a yurt?
Well, a tent is made out of a different material. Yurts generally are canvas. Tents, some are canvas, but yurt has a lot of decoration on the inside. We make them. They have handmade decorations on the outside, handmade decorations on the inside.
Okay.
They're wood structures. Tents are just, usually unstructured. And these are, now we're making them out of steel as well for support.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
and
that helps.
Is the base part of what a definition of a yurt is? That I've seen most of them have an elevated or raised sort of platform that the canvas is on top of. Is that required, or that's not part of a yurt?
Well, the base is what somebody wants it to be. I mean, you could theoretically put it in the dirt. We don't recommend that, but any type of elevated structure would be good. The domes are, very popular these days. You probably see them all over. I mean, you could see some of ours on it, even like on NBC's Deal or No Deal Island on Tuesday evening. They have all the contestants staying them for this season.
Oh, cool. Well, if I keep asking you questions about yurts, Barry, we're never going to get to AI, so I'm going to probably move us along. All right, so let's just give me a quick overview of sort of your experience with AI so far. Like, where are you in your AI journey, let's say?
My experience with AI is I'm evolving. I just recently hired a consultant who's going to start the beginning of July to institute AI into our business. So the purpose of it for me is to keep up with the world. AI is here. It's going to be bigger. It's in its infant stages. And I think companies, it will just be as common as a restroom facility for companies in the next few years.
Yeah. In my head, I sometimes equate AI with a utility as we move forward here. It'll be as ubiquitous as what the internet has become in the last 25 years to most people. That's my opinion. I think that will manifest differently for different people and different entities, but I do think it'll become that ubiquitous.
We hope it won't become like those sci-fi movies where the AI takes over, and then you have like the War Games movie, and
Yeah,
game over.
right. Completely agree. And I do think that Hollywood tends to either give you a dystopia future or a utopia future. They don't seem to give you many. We work with AI all the time and there's no problems. But they're trying to tell stories and sell tickets and popcorn and whatever. And I get what's going
Well,
on.
that's just it. They're trying to sell tickets. There was an instance that I heard of recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago, where they tried to turn off an AI system and it wouldn't let them.
Right. I can tell you what you're referring to there, and I can tell you the details, actually, which are kind of interesting. If you'd like to hear that story, I have all the information.
Yeah, that I'm sure everybody would be interested in that.
Sure, you got it. So there's a company called Anthropic, and they are an offshoot. There are a few employees that left OpenAI a couple years ago and started a company called Anthropic, and they have a series of models that start with the name Claude, and Claude 3.5, Claude 3.7. They're different, and then Opus and Sonnet, and there's a few different variations of models. Anthropic's primary sort of description of themselves is that they want to create an environment where AI safety is first and foremost. And this particular conversation that you are referring to, the commentary that came out, was that during the testing of Claude 4, which is the latest release, one of the test engineers mentioned that the model was trying desperately to report the user because they were trying to test the guardrails built into the model around various safety protocols, because that's how you do quality assurance, right? You have to test the extremes, and the model's been programmed to respond to those extremes and try to solve the problem or try to reach out. And in fact, if you give the Claude environment a tool like the ability to use a phone, it will try and call out and ask for help. And it's literally programmed into the system. And the reason it was triggered was not because the AI was trying to take over, it's because the AI was following its programmed path, and this QA tester was pushing the limits of what it could do, and literally was trying to ask, questions like, I'm just writing a book, tell me how to kill someone. And the model is explicitly saying, I don't think you're trying to write a book. So that's what that, and then that just got picked up in social media as, oh, the AI is already out of control, and of course got turned into the stories that got turned into.
Yeah, but you would see that the potential is there for that to happen.
The potential is there if all the circumstances are right. And the model thinks that you're trying to do something that is outside of its parameters. Then yeah, it has the ability to take action if it's given the tools. If the AI does have access to tools and it thinks that you're outside of its parameters that it's been programmed for, it does have the ability to take action with those tools. That really is built into Claude. The other thing that I'll say to you is Anthropic does seem to regularly kind of claim that things are heading in an interesting direction, and then they tend to get more funding, and then they keep doing work. So,
well, I was reading Elon Musk's AI. They're bleeding $1 billion a month into this thing.
Yeah,
with no end in sight.
Right. They are, and that's the X.AI's Grok models, which are available to the public as subscriptions. And those models are using and training against data that's on X or Twitter.
Which model? What do you favor for your use?
I actually change models based on either the what I'm trying to do task wise, or what's popular at the moment. I actually think that there isn't one good model for everything all the time. I do think that there's a lot of updates and research. So, for example, the Claude 4 series is doing some interesting work right now, and especially on the tool front. So if you're using things like MCP servers, and we can talk about that. Llama 4, which is an open source model that Meta produces, had some interesting ups and downs. It's only about a month or so old. And I use that occasionally. I don't find that being exceptional, like really, really amazing results. But I don't think they're really bad. But the one that I've been using at least recently now here in June that I like a lot is Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro, which seems to have quite a lot of capability. It seems to be relatively quick from a response perspective, and it tends to, right now, I'm not seeing as many mistakes and errors with some other models that I might see. I expect that will change within the next month. I think there'll be a new contender that's doing amazing things, and that makes it interesting from the perspective of some of the work that we do in Syngin, where we're building projects for customers. Which model do we pin the project against so we get reliable results? But over time, do we lose out on functionality? And so it's been a conversation inside the company for a while. How do we keep up with that?
I'm going to just, get one and just train it, to my business. And hopefully, it'll work, and as it learns more and more about me and my business, I expect it, to give the benefits that I'm hoping for.
So,
most of it, I guess, would be research based, and trying to get more sales, trying to find areas that we haven't explored yet.
Okay.
Things of that nature.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Is your intention to fine tune a model with your information that you can use? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes. Well, I'm hiring somebody to actually do that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I assume you've already had a conversation. So what they're basically telling you is they'll take a lot of data that you have available and they'll train the model with your data so it understands your data. And then when you ask questions, it can respond with your information. Are they doing it as a RAG, or are they doing it as fine-tuned?
Well, it's gonna evolve. So we're gonna start with my emails. I get literally, I don't even know how many emails during the day that, and are just advertisements. So it's going to filter those out. And then we're going to go after that. We're going to start working on, the training process. So, like the work that's going to take place in the beginning, I'm not pretty much going to be involved in. He's going to do it in the background, and then we're going to do it in stages.
Okay.
So that I become more efficient myself.
Something for you and the consultant to talk about, just a piece of information to share with you here. There's two ways to use your data with an AI at this stage. One is called Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's referred to as RAG. And the other is if you fine-tune or build a custom model. And there's pros and cons, and I just want to explain them both to you and to the audience, obviously, so that if the use case ends up being driving you to one direction or another, you can then work with your consultant on what the right answer is. So when I do a fine-tuned model, I take a data set, I massage that data the way it's necessary to do, and then I perform an operation to fine-tune, to revise an existing model and help teach it, this is the right answer for this kind of question. This is the type of data I want you to understand and respond with. And that takes some amount of time, depending on the amount of data and the model and the tools. It could take between 2 and 6 weeks to build a fine-tuned model. And when that model is done, it works just like existing LLMs, but it has a cutoff date with respect to what it knows. So it only knows what it's been trained with, and any new data since it's been trained, it doesn't know anything about. And that works for certain use cases, but doesn't work for all. Now, the other side of that equation is the Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. And RAG doesn't train a model. What RAG does instead is it looks at your data set and it creates an interim database in a particular fashion that your LLM interaction has the ability to query. So what happens is you go to a chat interface and you ask it a question. You could say, what's the financial information for the company last quarter? And the system, the chat interface says, hang on, I have data about that over here in this custom database. That's what RAG is. It queries the data in the database, and then it grabs the relevant information or context from the database about your data along with your question, and it sends that to the LLM and says, hey, here's the question, and here's some useful data that might help you answer the question. And the LLM thinks about it and does its stuff. The advantage with RAG is that as your documents change, as you get new emails, as more information shows up, you can have that data constantly being ingested by the RAG. And while there might be a bit of a delay, there isn't this time cutoff that a fine-tuned model would have. And let's say, for the sake of discussion, that your RAG is 12 hours out of date. Okay, that's way better than 3 months. So I'm not telling you what the right answer is for your use case, Barry. We can talk about it if you want. I have no problem with that. But like, those are your two choices. And for what you sounded like you were going after, I think RAG might be better than a fine-tuned model, because you're going to have this problem where you got to constantly fine-tune it over and over.
You're an expert in this, right?
I don't know if I'm an expert, but I have a lot of knowledge, and I've been playing with this for a while, so I know some stuff. I'll go with that.
That's great. I'm going to make a note of that, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And hopefully that helps anybody else that might be listening and doesn't understand the difference between those two. I do think there are times when a fine-tuned model is exactly the right answer, but when you want really fresh information, RAG is currently the best solution for the time being.
You have any other helpful tips?
Well, I'll say this. You were talking about sales and possibly having AI help you with sales. What did you have in mind there? There's no right or wrong, but just what were you thinking through?
Well, usually 80% of the people you talk to basically are a waste of time. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's just a rule of thumb. And then, the 20%, has interest. And then out of that, you got to pick what you get. That's how your business sales are done. So fine tuning the sales process would be probably optimal. Even coming down to where it could automatically send an email to the potential client of maybe a sale that's going on, or a new item, or to wake somebody up and see where they are in their buying. The stuff that I sell is all very costly.
Right.
My average sale is probably $7,000 or $8,000, which is unusual. So we have a low volume business and a higher profit business. So obviously I don't know everything, and the AI, which I think could gather reams and reams of information and compress it and give it back to me in some kind of form that could keep us on the cutting edge. Like, it could tell me, hey, I just saw a new dome distributor opened up in Canada.
Right.
You now have a new competition. I'm going to find out. I don't know enough about it yet, but I don't know that who does. But I'm sure there's many people that know a lot more than I do.
I guess my question here would be, how are you, if you're doing any prospecting, how are you currently doing prospecting? How are you finding clients?
Prospecting comes from pay-per-click, from a variety of sources, and it comes from organic searches, which our keywords are embedded, and we don't have a million competitors. We don't live in a big space. We live in a relatively small space because it's not a high volume industry, and we have a pretty large selection of what we do, more so than probably almost all our competitors.
Okay. Do you do at the moment any sort of, I'll refer to as passive advertising, so like social media content production, posting of articles or blogs or anything like that from an informational side?
Yes, we do. We have people that write articles for us. They're posted weekly. We opine on various subjects that are thrown out there. We have Facebook pages. I have somebody that does LinkedIn marketing for me. We do a lot of different marketing. We have a public relations company that contributes every month. So we're out there.
Just about everything you said on that side can actually be improved with an AI or even fully automated with an AI. Or, to keep you a completely answer here, or you can have an automated workflow with what I refer to as a human in the loop component. Let me explain what I mean. There's a lot of places that this can go and a lot of directions that it can take, but I'll just give you one example. So you mentioned LinkedIn, and that you're doing content production, articles are being generated, sometimes you're providing an opinion about things, etc. And you post those where you need to post them, sometimes on your website, also on LinkedIn and any other social that makes sense. But you can have most of that automated. And when I say most of that, what I mean is you can have, I'll give you a full example. This will sound like it's a lot, but the automation takes care of most of this, but I'll just give you an idea. Let's say you have a Google Sheet. Wow. It could be a lot of other things, but we're just going to use Google as a moment. And you have a Google Sheet, and in that Google Sheet, you have a list of topics or keywords that you care about. You probably would have yurt on that list. You probably would have domes and other things that are germane to your particular business. And you know the words better than I do, but you get the idea. So you have that list, and then you have an automated workflow. There's a bunch of different tools that provide this capability. The automated workflow is configured that at a certain time every day, it can do multiple times a day, but whatever, we'll just say, every morning at 7 a.m., it goes and opens that Google Sheet. It reads the topics. It then uses an AI-aware search tool and finds articles that have been posted in the last 24 hours that contain any of those keywords or that are related to any of those topics. And it grabs those articles and brings them back into the system. You can ask the AI to summarize the article and give you a 1-paragraph summary. And each of those articles can be sent to you as a link, sent to you as a summary and a link, so that you can stay up to date on topics. And this can be an interesting research tool, but also you could add to this workflow, I'd like you to take this article that's relevant and germane to my domain, and I want you to post it on my socials to share with others so that they can see me as a resource talking knowledgeably about the industry. And you can have the AI make a comment about it. It can automatically post it for you on your LinkedIn, on Twitter. It can make a blog post on your website. It can use your format, it can create an image. Like, there's 100 things the workflow could do. Or another variation, I know I'm throwing a lot out at you, but I want to have stuff that we can talk about here. You can have it go out and find, of the topics that you listed, and you list them, say, in priority order, it finds the number one article with the most views, the most traction that's happening on that topic. It creates a summary, and then it sends you a message, whether that's an email or a Slack or a text message or whatever you want it to do, that says, hey, I found this article or this content. Do you want me to post it? And you can say yes or no. And if you say yes, off it goes, and it posts it for you. And when I say you, Barry, it doesn't have to be you. It could be one of your employees. It could be someone in charge of your content. I'm just saying the AI can do all of that for you.
What is your opinion about AI written articles? Of course, my SEO manager, if she sees AI in there, she bounces them because it's not original content.
Well, I'll say this. You're in a losing game because the amount of AI-generated content joining the internet is a flood, and I don't think it's going to stop. And I don't think people are now searching for non-AI content because I don't know that you can really do that. You can ask Google things, but the AI is just going to get better and better at content generation. There's currently some ways to detect some models because they do similar things, but you can just prompt the model correctly and it'll not look like an AI-generated article. I guess I would say this. I would want to understand the motivation behind we don't want to post AI-generated content. and what problem we're trying to solve. I'd like to, if you know that, I'd love to have that conversation. But if you don't know it, it's fine. I understand it's not you.
I don't know, to be honest with you, but she's, she looks for original content. So I imagine that has something to do with it.
Sure. I'll say this. In the sequence I just described to you, that human in the loop component could very much be, here's the summary from the AI, here's the article, and stop there. And now it's up to you to generate your own unique content from there, using the summary or not, using, relating to the article itself, even if you link to it, and generate your own content. But the work of what should I talk about has been done. Here's a popular topic. Here's a thing people are talking about. Go write that. Or you could change this whole sequence. Instead of it generating content for you, you could have it generating what you should be talking about. Here's the popular topics across, 5 or 6 different social media sites related to your keywords. This is what people are either asking questions of or talking about or what have you. And it can be a research tool as well as a way to identify potential customers.
Okay. Good answer.
I'll give you an example. One of the ways you could modify this workflow, this sounds weird, but I just want to throw some things out there. I'm sure you're aware of Reddit, and there are yurt-related subreddits, probably many of them. You could have an AI workflow that's monitoring conversations on all of those yurt subreddits and can send a message that says, hey, somebody's asking questions about your yurts. And you could get a link right to the conversation and say, hey, this is Barry. Let me help you out, or whatever. Like, it can do a lot of things.
Sounds like it, man. Like I said, it's just getting started.
It is indeed. Do you think, I know I just threw this at you, but I'm just curious, your opinion. Do you think any of those things would be something you might want to investigate for yourself?
Absolutely. All of them.
All of them. Okay.
Why not?
Yeah. In the end, these workflows, cost you some amount of AI credits or tokens, but it's usually, depending on how much work you put into the workflow, it could be $1 a day. It could be pennies a day. It just depends on what you're doing. And it's work that is just hard to do manually. Doing all that searching and validating it's the right topics and all those things, the AI does exceptionally well. And there's a lot of tooling built out to support it. So, from my opinion, I think most folks should be looking at what automation can they take advantage of, and what cool tools could they use to help automate some of the things. I've got a couple of clients that are using workflow automation like this to create all of their social media content that gets posted multiple times a day. And it's not having the bot comment on someone's, but that's disingenuous, and I don't think that's the right answer. But it's, here's a special we're running. Here's a new product we've made. Here's a discount offer. Those are just being automated and sent out. No humans touching it.
AI is really, we'll see how it changes, how people work, how people live, how people learn. At school, people are going to, all of a sudden, all these kids are going to ace their tests because they're smart enough how to use AI. Unless they're sitting in front of a teacher.
That's right. So that's an excellent point, and we'll spend a minute and just talk real quickly about it. I think what's happened in the education space, and what I think a lot of educators are currently trying to figure out the best answers to, prior to a lot of this automation and phone in your pocket and all the rest of those things, what schools were doing to track progress was effectively fact memorization testing at a high level, right? Do you remember these rules? Do you know how to do this geometry problem? Do you know how to write those sorts of, did we get it burned into your head? Now we probably need to think about how we test the skill we're trying to impart differently. And, think of an English teacher. The AI is going to produce a perfectly valid paragraph most of the time. Not everyone will agree with that statement, but depending on the grade level you're talking about, you'll get pretty good output now from most of the current models. And if you prompt it correctly, and this is a thing I think we should spend some time on, but if you ask the right question, you'll get pretty good output right now. And that will be difficult to differentiate from what a student would do. In fact, most of the time, the AI probably answers more grammatically correct than the students will. Is that the thing we should be testing? Or should we be asking for different stuff? Should we be saying, okay, I want you to use the AI to create a story about this topic, and here's some elements I want you to include in the story, and I want you to spin it and make it unique to yourself. And I'm looking for creativity from you, as well as your way, how you interact with the AI to get something done. Is that a new skill we should be testing? I think we should, but I'm not an educator.
Yeah, but in theory, you could just take a kid and they don't know anything, and you just teach them how to use AI, and then they know everything.
True, but you could say the same thing about giving a kid an encyclopedia to an extent.
Encyclopedias are outdated from the day they're printed.
Yes, I agree, but so is a model from the perspective of its data is outdated from the minute it was created. It's not
Absolutely.
Right? But I guess what I'm getting at is if you give information in and of itself, it doesn't teach anything. It's just data. It just sits there. And that's kind of true for just about anybody. So the skill that we want there is how do you learn and take on new information when presented? And whether that information comes from an AI or comes from an encyclopedia should be irrelevant. How do we test the can you take on new data skill? Because that's the thing humans need. How do you learn, right? You got to learn your whole life because you can never be born with everything, obviously. So even in the age of AI, you still need to be able to learn stuff. But you now have this cool tool that can help you. And I don't know if that paradigm shift is evident yet, but I think that's one of the things we should be thinking about is, okay, you've got access to a ton of information at your fingertips. How does that improve what you can do? Can you learn faster? Can you do things better? I don't know, but I think education's going to shift a little bit.
Better and maybe more efficient is something that'll be different. I mean, for an example, when I was growing up and I worked in these retail stores, we had to count change. When somebody gave you $10 and it was $6.58, you had to give them $3.42 back. You take any 10 kids, 15 years old in a room, I bet you maybe one or two of them would be able to do it without the use of a calculator.
Right. I agree. And part of that is they don't really use cash.
Well, they don't use cash, or they don't use as much cash anymore.
Right.
For sure. But let's go back 10 years ago, it was the same thing. I mean, if you worked at McDonald's, you pressed the hamburger, you pressed the French fries, you pressed the soda, and then you said the guy gave me $20.04. It tells you exactly what to give him back.
Right.
You're just another one of the machines there.
Yes, and I've actually heard this conversation for a while from folks. That, as an example, we'll take your cash register model, right? Old school cash registers, you had to count the change yourself. It didn't tell you anything on the screen. You got $20, you looked at the sale and you went, all right, I got to count out the pennies. You did your thing. Then the cash registers start to show you the change that you're supposed to deliver. And so what people were seeing is these folks don't know how to do the math themselves. They're just looking at the screen and they're losing the skill of counting money. And that's true. But I could say similarly, an elevator operator was a skill that no longer was necessary as elevator buttons became more popular than people cranking and doing their thing. My question then becomes, I don't have the answer here, Barry. I'm simply just brainstorming. My question then becomes, is making change no longer a skill we need because paper money is been on its way out since the mid 80s, since the introduction of an ATM. But how many checks have you written in the last year? Nowhere near as many as you might have written 25 years ago, that kind of thing. So some things are changing and they're just going to happen, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, now I write checks on my business. I go to the pay system. I type in the amount and off it goes. I don't put a stamp on it. I don't have to bring it outside. And my checkbook is always in balance. That used to be a different skill. So that was math. Everything revolves around math, no matter what you do, driving, walking, talking, everything has a math function to it. And if you don't know math, you're screwed. But the math I learn like algebra and geometry, that's just, I guess, basic reason. And, if you can't do geometry, that doesn't mean that you can't do numerical math, which is used in a day-to-day setting.
Right. Agreed. And the other thing I think it's really germane with what you're saying there, the idea that technology changes and skills modify over time. I think that human history shows that that's true. I think AI is no different, and that is going to continue to be true. The second piece that you mentioned about, we'll take algebra and geometry. One facet of that was certainly learning how to calculate, the area of a rectangle. Okay, cool. And if your day-to-day job needed that, I bet you use that formula all the time and you got really good at it. But the other skill that was really being taught there that's sort of under the hood is the idea of logic and problem solving, and how do I go from this abstract, I'd like to have this answer, to a concrete set of steps to get me to a result. And that isn't explicit when learning geometry or algebra, but it is implicit. You can't, perform an algebraic operation without understanding that there's sequence and flow and order of operations, all the rest of the things that you learn, which eventually is just teaching the person the idea of logic and the idea of following a sequence of steps, which you use more in your day-to-day life across your whole existence than you use, a squared plus b squared equals c squared in and of itself. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And that's why I'm saying...
So that's just one area.
Right. No, of course. And that's why I'm trying to lean on, I think AI is moving the skill set meter from, we'll just say from A to B. I don't know that it's moving everything. I don't mean to suggest I have that answer, but it's part of what I see in my interactions. And people are now becoming, or needing to become, a little bit better trained on the correct way to prompt an AI. If you give it the right input, you'll get much, much better output. And I think some folks are learning that just experientially, and some folks are eventually getting training, teaching them how to do something called prompt engineering, where what people eventually learn here is if you ask a garbage question, you end up getting relatively garbage output because of the way the LLM works and the way the neural network operates. And unfortunately, Google has trained all of us for the last couple decades to ask garbage questions because it just looks for keywords. But what an LLM wants is context. And the more context, the more details, the more flowery, the more descriptive that you can be when you prompt the LLM, the better the overall result set is. And it kind of works like this. Just a real quick example to explain what I mean. If you ask the LLM, what are bats made of? And you don't provide any other context, you have a 50-50 chance of getting wood or hair and muscle, because there's no context in your question that identifies whether you mean a baseball bat or an animal.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's
Right?
just it. Yeah. That's going to become secondary, right? Because we're in the beginning stages of it.
Yes, absolutely. This is prompt engineering, right? If you ask what are American wooden baseball bats made out of, and then you might get, birch and ash or whatever, like you'll get a much better response because you provided enough context and detail. And what I want to leave folks with thought process wise there is, when you're interacting with an LLM, provide context and detail because you'll get much, much, much better output.
That's the basis of the thing. So
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
Well, Barry, we've been all over the place. I've had fun. This has been a great conversation. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Barry. I'll close us out here, and thanks for listening to the AI for Business Owners podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.